The United States is simultaneously managing a shooting war in Iran, an ongoing military conflict between Russia and Ukraine, a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, strained alliances across Europe and Asia, and a diplomatic standoff with China over technology and trade. The institution designed and funded by the American taxpayer to handle all of those crises at once is the State Department, home to thousands of trained diplomats, regional experts, and foreign service officers who speak the languages, know the history, and have spent entire careers building the relationships that American foreign policy depends on. And right now, that institution is being systematically hollowed out, while the most consequential foreign policy decisions of this era are being handed to a real estate developer who once referred to the Strait of Hormuz as the Gulf of Hormuz, and to the president's own son-in-law who calls himself a volunteer. This is the story of what has happened to American diplomacy under Marco Rubio's State Department, why career experts are calling it one of the great unforced errors in the history of United States foreign policy, and why the consequences of dismantling the world's most powerful diplomatic institution in the middle of multiple simultaneous global crises are already being felt in ways that cannot easily be undone. Start with who Marco Rubio was supposed to be when Trump nominated him as Secretary of State. As a United States Senator from Florida, Rubio was a high-profile hawk on China and Russia, a strong supporter of Taiwan, Ukraine, and NATO, and an advocate for free trade and human rights. He was nicknamed the Secretary of Everything because he was expected to bring a muscular, traditional Republican foreign policy framework to an administration that some feared might otherwise drift toward chaos. He had credentials, he had experience, he had a reputation as someone who took the complexity of global affairs seriously. What happened instead is a story about how institutional power works and what it looks like when the President of the United States decides he does not actually want a Secretary of State doing the job the way it is supposed to be done. At the heart of the dysfunction is the systematic marginalization of Rubio. Although the State Department was designed to manage complex global crises through institutional memory and congressional oversight, Trump has increasingly handed the keys of American foreign policy to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, operating under the auspices of the newly created Board of Peace. These are not diplomats. They are real estate developers who treat sovereign nations like distressed assets in a foreclosure sale. Steve Witkoff's net worth stands at approximately $2.3 billion. Since serving as a volunteer White House envoy, his wealth grew by 15%, largely due to his stake in the crypto firm World Liberty Financial, which he and his sons co-founded with the Trump family. Witkoff's son is chief executive of a cryptocurrency company that received significant investment from a firm tied to the United Arab Emirates. And yet, this is the man conducting the most sensitive diplomatic negotiations the United States has engaged in during the last decade, with no congressional oversight, no confirmation hearing, and no accountability to the American people for the deals he strikes on their behalf. A former senior U.S. diplomat and Carnegie Endowment for International Peace fellow said plainly that Witkoff and Kushner are clearly uninformed or ignorant about the deep roots of the conflicts they are negotiating, the overlapping nature of shared religious space, and the demands and needs of both sides. He noted that in Trump's first term, Kushner said openly he was not interested in hearing about any previous agreement or negotiation. The diplomat's assessment of all three negotiations, Russia-Ukraine, Iran, and Israel-Palestine, is that they have failed to produce anything consequential, and that U.S. policy across all three is rudderless, with no overall strategy and little coordination between means and ends. What makes all of this more alarming is that the deception ran deep from the very beginning. It is now clear that Witkoff and Kushner appear to sense what Trump wanted and, at his direction, played out a strategy of engaging with Iran and making unrealizable demands while Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu were already plotting war. The administration scheduled follow-up diplomatic talks and even a trip by Secretary Rubio to Israel when it already knew war was imminent. an unwitting foreign minister from Oman found himself sitting alone in a Washington meeting room, believing negotiations were ongoing, the day before the United States went to war with Iran. That is not diplomacy. That is a deception operation run against an American partner. Now let us look at what has happened inside the State Department itself, because the Witkoff and Kushner shadow operation is only half the story. The other half is the systematic destruction of the institutional capacity that makes American diplomacy possible in the first place. What former diplomats describe is a systematic hollowing out of the State Department that Rubio himself pledged on his first day to reverse. Although the agency has begun hiring new diplomats, the loss of experienced personnel will have far-reaching consequences for the ability of the United States to project power and deliver on its priorities both now and for years to come. Former career ambassador John Bass, who served as U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan, Turkey, and Georgia, said historians will look back on this period as one of the great unforced errors that the United States imposes on itself. He added that the administration wants a set of professionals who are only going to do what they are told, who will not push back on decisions, and who are not going to provide alternative viewpoints. But it is precisely that kind of expertise, Bass said, that has kept the country from making even bigger mistakes. One of the most damaging specific losses was the shuttering of the Bureau of Energy Resources. That team had been actively working to limit Iran's ability to deliver crude oil and was using all available policy tools to help deal with Iran and weaken the regime. The entire bureau was eliminated as part of the State Department reorganization. The entire staff was fired. The critical capabilities were officially described as being moved elsewhere, but the experienced people who ran those capabilities were gone. Consider what that means in context. The United States is currently fighting a war with Iran that hinges enormously on oil, energy blockades, and the Strait of Hormuz. The team of energy diplomacy experts, whose entire job was to understand Iran's oil infrastructure, its vulnerabilities, and its international customers, was fired before the war began. The people whose expertise was most directly relevant to the most pressing foreign policy crisis of the moment were eliminated on a reorganization chart. More than 100 ambassador posts remain vacant right now, including key positions in the Middle East, Russia, and Ukraine. This leaves the United States at a significant disadvantage compared to adversaries like China, which has fully staffed diplomatic missions in virtually every country on Earth. An ambassador is not a symbolic figure. An ambassador is the highest-ranking American official in a foreign country, the person who calls the foreign minister at 2 a.m. when something goes wrong, who knows personally the people making decisions in that government, who has spent years building the trust that makes emergency communication possible. Having more than 100 of those positions vacant during a period of multiple simultaneous global crises is not a management choice. It is a strategic incapacity. Even for senior career diplomats who want to stay, there are not positions available. Under the Foreign Service Act of 1980, ambassadors overseas have 90 days to find another assignment or retire. The administration is using that rule to force experienced people into retirement because those who are still able and willing to work are not finding positions. The message being sent to the remaining workforce is clear. Either you accept a shrinking, reoriented department where loyalty to the president's agenda is the primary qualification, or you leave. On April 1st, the State Department announced a series of reforms to the Foreign Service exam aimed at what the administration called eradicating the diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda. These changes included an orientation curriculum centered on America First that required prospective Foreign Service officers to affirm their support for Trump's executive orders and demonstrate their fidelity at every turn. America's diplomatic corps has historically drawn its strength from its diversity, from its ability to send people who look like, speak like, and understand the cultures they are working in. Requiring ideological loyalty tests as a condition of entry into the Foreign Service does not produce better diplomats. It produces a diplomatic corps that is afraid to tell the president things he does not want to hear. Meanwhile, Rubio has been dispatched on assignments that tell you exactly how the administration views his role. He was sent to the Vatican to visit Pope Leo XIV. He attended meetings at the White House with NATO's Secretary General. He held meetings at the State Department with an Uzbek politician. These are not the assignments of a man running American foreign policy. These are the assignments of a man being kept busy so he does not get in the way of the people who are actually running it. The deal-making logic of luxury real estate, where loyalty is the only currency and every conflict is viewed as a property to be liquidated, is catastrophically ill-suited for the complexities of global security. Real estate is transactional and zero-sum. Diplomacy is a long-term game of managing perceptions, maintaining alliances, and understanding the deep-seated grievances of adversaries. You can flip a hotel in Manhattan by sheer force of personality, but you cannot flip a nuclear-armed state or a centuries-old territorial dispute. When foreign leaders realize that the Secretary of State is a mere figurehead, they stop dealing with the American government and start dealing exclusively with the family. This turns American foreign policy into a dynastic enterprise where access is sold as influence and the national interest is subsumed by personal relationships. The consequences of what is happening at the State Department right now are not abstract. They are visible in the ongoing war with Iran that the pre-war deception helped make more likely. They are visible in the Ukraine conflict that remains unresolved because Trump refuses to press Russia with the leverage he actually has. They are visible in Gaza, where a series of performative announcements has substituted for any genuine path to peace. And they are visible in the more than 100 vacant ambassador posts in some of the most volatile regions on Earth. The administration's position, stated by State Department spokesperson Tommy Pigott, is that the idea the agency is being hollowed out is false, that the loss of hundreds of experienced diplomats will not impact the ability of the United States to deliver on its priorities, and that the reorganization was designed to empower personnel in the field and allow the department to move at what he called the speed of relevancy. But the speed of relevancy does not mean much when the people who understood the relevant issues have been fired. You cannot move quickly through a crisis you do not understand. You cannot build trust with a foreign government through a son-in-law who treats the negotiation like a Manhattan real estate closing. And you cannot protect American interests around the world by replacing career diplomats with loyalty pledges and leaving more than 100 of the most important diplomatic posts on Earth sitting empty. The State Department was not built in a day. The expertise, the relationships, the institutional knowledge, the language skills, and the regional understanding that made it the most powerful diplomatic institution in the world were accumulated over decades. When you fire the people who carry that knowledge, the knowledge does not transfer to a spreadsheet. It walks out the door. And right now, with the United States simultaneously at war, managing a fragile European security architecture, navigating a technological standoff with China, and trying to hold together a global trade system that its own tariff policies nearly shattered, that knowledge is exactly what this country cannot afford to lose.